everyone, welcome to OET 369. I hope you're all doing very well and very nice to see you all. So today I'm here with this video to discuss about selection of case notes. So recently many of my students have said, like when I correct the letter, they have learned how to write a paragraph, they have learned how to organize a letter, but the main issue they are facing is but the task they do or the content they write is going irrelevant. Okay, and when I ask them, they don't have a clue what to include and what not to include and why they can't. Okay, so let's have a discussion about that. When you get an OET writing case note, what is the first thing you're going to do? I think the first and foremost thing that you need to do is read the writing task. Okay, the writing task is the most important part of a case note. When you read the writing task, it will tell you first thing who you are writing to, who is that letter to, and the next thing the task will probably tell you is why are you writing. Okay, so why you are writing that letter, so who and why. These are the two things that you need to look into. Okay, let's take who you are writing to. Okay, so when let's compare these two tasks. Okay, and while you go through this task, you need to think one more thing. Whoever you are writing to, whether that person know the patient already, or is that patient completely new to this person. Okay, so is that a known patient or is that an unknown patient? Okay, let's go and compare these two tasks. When you have compared these two tasks, the first thing is, in the first task, the patient is going back to the nursing home, which means the nursing home already knows that patient. So you don't have to be telling about the patient's history, or about the patient's medical history or social history. That is completely irrelevant because they know that already. You may not have to tell about the complaints during admission because that's the reason why they send the patient to you. So that may be probably known to them. So you may not have to include that. Okay, but what if the case where the patient is completely new to them? You have to tell all this. Okay, in the task number 2, the patient is a new transfer to the nursing home. So those nursing home people doesn't know this patient. So you should be telling them, and it's your responsibility to tell them what the patient is, about the patient's history and would support the patient minutes. So you may have to tell them everything. Okay, so who you are writing to, whether that is a known case, is an absolutely important factor in your writing task. Okay, and this is going to affect your writing marks. The content is an important criteria, so you need to meet that criteria to ensure your score. Next thing, we will take why you are writing to. Oh, before I go to that, who you are writing to, the person's job role, that is another important thing you can actually take into consideration. For example, if I write to a dermatologist, I may have to tell about patient's dermatology. I may have to tell about patient's skin condition, especially for medical writing task. Whereas if I'm writing to a pulmonologist, you shouldn't be telling about patients. It's clear that you should avoid all those things. When you come into the nursing task, if you write to an oncology specialist nurse, you should be telling about the patient's history and any immunosuppressants patient's taking. Whereas if you are writing to a neurologist, you should be telling about patient's neurological condition. You shouldn't have to include that patient has osteoarthritis, patient has fractured 3 years ago. So whoever the specialty is, if you're writing to a respiratory specialist nurse, put the things related to the respiratory system of the patient. If you are writing to a neurologist, put the neurological condition of the patient and the past medical history which may affect the neurological system. If you are writing to a diabetes specialist nurse, again, explain about the dietary habits, explain about the patient's sedentary lifestyle, something like that, and maybe you can tell about the patient's pre-existing management of diabetes or what their diet is like. You can tell about the lifestyle. Okay, the other thing is, when you go out from nursing, you may probably write to a social worker. Okay, so you can actually write the patients with diabetes for community support to a social worker. Here, you should be telling about patient's social history because that social worker should know the existing support to organize the advanced support. So if the patient has support already, he's fine. So they should know that. So if you are writing to a social worker, then you should include the social history. You should be including about the family, about their occupation probably. But whereas if you're writing to a nurse, you don't want this. Okay. Another case note, if you're writing to a dietitian, give relevance to the patient's dietary habits. Give relevance to the patient's exercise pattern. If any habits of alcoholism and smoking, yes, you have to mention that. Okay, so all the job role person's job role may affect your content in the writing. So in the particular context who you are writing to, you need to examine whether that person is known to that patient, whether that patient is to know that person, and you need to examine the one more thing, the job role of that person. And once you have examined this, it should then tell you what to write. Okay, now let's take why you are writing. Okay, most of the people are not looking into this aspect, I think. So what is the job of that particular reader? If you're writing to a diabetes specialist nurse, what is that diabetes specialist nurse going to do to your patient? For example, in the example one, just let's take the diabetes specialist nurse is going to assess the patient's possibility of diabetes. Okay, you're asking that diabetes nurse, is this patient is at risk of diabetes, or is this patient has actually diabetes, he's not diagnosed with it? Then you may have to tell about the patient's family history. You may have to give more relevance to the patient's pre-existing conditions. Okay, let's take on the other aspect of that. You are actually writing to diabetes specialist to manage the patient's diabetes. So here the patient's diabetes diagnosis is already established. You are just asking the diabetes nurse to probably control the medication or increase the medication or adjust the insulin dose, something like that. So see the task, see the plan. Is the diabetes nurse actually doing anything with your information? So when you are saying like, oh, patient's father has history of diabetes, but are they going to use this information to manage the diabetes? That is an important question. So looking what the reader is going to do is an important part while you select the case note. If the reader is not going to touch your information, that information is completely irrelevant. Guys, we're all medical professionals, so we should be a bit sensible to understand that. After writing the case note, while you practice, just examine yourself. Each sentence, is that useful to the reader? If I was the reader, will I use that information? Put yourself as a reader rather than the nurse writing. Okay, you need to imagine yourself as the reader who read this case note, and you need to examine, actually, am I going to use this? If you are, then that content is relevant. Okay, if you are not, then that is irrelevant. And when you practice this, you will get into the track where you can put useful information and where you can ignore or you can eliminate the irrelevant information. Okay guys, so I hope this video was useful for all of you, and I got recently questions asking why am I not doing videos, but I'm back now, so you can actually expect more videos related to the writing case notes, and I'm arranging more videos related which is hoping to be useful for all of you. And exams have started as usual, so I would like to remind you that we should be practicing on a daily basis to achieve your target grade in the OET exam. Okay. Again, if you have any specific personal queries, I would like to remind you that I've included my WhatsApp number with the description. You can WhatsApp me for any specific questions or queries. And I've also included my email ID, that is oet369@gmail.com. You can also email me for any further queries. If you're looking for any online classes, then you can also WhatsApp me in the given number. I do online classes because that's the question I do get a lot more these days. So yes, you can WhatsApp me, and I'm always happy to provide you with the details. Okay, thank you so much for watching, and thank you for all your support, and keep on watching OET 369. Bye bye.